Whenever Cher speaks, the world pays attention. But today, her words focus on someone completely unexpected. The elusive Leon Russell. What could the Queen of Pop possibly reveal about one of the most enigmatic and influential artists in rock history? The truth might just astonish you. This is not an interview you would want to overlook now. Before we uncover Cher's rare reflections on Leon Russell, let's first journey through the incredible story of his early life and musical beginnings. How many people do you know that have a wicker bicycle on their wall? Claude Russell Bridges, known to the world as Leon Russell, was born on April 2nd, 1942, into a life already shaped by invisible battles. As the second son of John and Hester Bridges, young Claude entered a world where heartbreaking challenges awaited him. From the very first breath, a tragic injury during birth cruelly damaged his second and third vertebrae, leaving him with a form of cerebral palsy that would forever affect the right side of his body. Especially his hand. 3 fingers on his right hand could never move properly, forcing him to rely heavily on his left hand for everything, including the music that would one day define him. It was a brutally unfair beginning for a soul destined to inspire millions. Speech, that precious bridge between child and world, tragically eluded Claude for years. He remained silent deep into his childhood, until one day a miracle occurred. Watching birds flutter in the distance, young Claude turned to his mother, and for the first time spoke. "What's the matter?" "Little birdie, you cry." His mother stood frozen in awe, overwhelmed by the sound she had longed to hear for so long. It was a moment of pure aching beauty, born from years of silent sorrow. Despite these early hardships, music surged through Claude as if it had been etched into his soul before birth. At just 4 years old, he astounded his family by picking out the church hymn trust and obey entirely by ear. It was nothing short of miraculous, a beacon of hope in a journey already so marked by pain, the heavy 38-mile journey to piano. Lessons could not dampen his spirit, nor could the cruel limitations of his hand diminish his dreams. By the time he reached 5th grade, Claude's mastery of the piano, alto, saxophone, cornet, and baritone horn secured him a place in his high school marching band, a triumph against all odds. For someone still so heartbreakingly young, still frustration often shadowed his brilliance. Claude spent nearly a decade studying classical music, only to painfully realize that his hands would never allow him to perform it flawlessly. It was too complicated. He admitted a confession soaked in quiet grief. Yet instead of surrendering to despair, he invented new techniques, finding ways to mimic and reimagine classical sounds. Music became not just his refuge, but his defiant rebellion against a body that seemed determined to betray him. "I felt like the world had cheated me," Claude once confessed with a heavy heart. Yet he also recognized that without these tragic trials, he might have LED, an ordinary, forgettable life. Far from the extraordinary destiny that awaited him in the silent battles and hidden tears of his early years, Leon Russell was already forging a path that only he could walk, turning overwhelming pain into haunting melody, and cruel limitations into limitless possibility reality. To be in, it's not the real world. By the time he reached adolescence, Leon Russell was already a force that music could not contain. At the tender age of 15, he stepped into a tiny recording studio alongside his friend and classmate David Gates, to create his first recording, a track called Joe Baby, though Tulsa was still his home. Leon's dreams stretched far beyond the dusty plains of Oklahoma. Driven by an insatiable hunger for music, he began performing underage in local clubs, sneaking into venues with a fake ID and the audacious spirit that would later define his career. It was here that the name Leon Russell was born, a name that would soon echo across the music world night after night. He played until exhaustion overcame him, often sleeping through his English classes, but never once regretting the price he paid for his passion. Opportunity knocked when Jerry Lee Lewis extended an invitation to join him on tour. Without hesitation, Leon cast aside the traditional path of college, choosing instead a life on the road, filled with music, uncertainty, and the relentless pursuit of dreams. I figured this was my chance to eat in a lot of restaurants and travel around, he quipped, masking the profound loneliness and sacrifice beneath a veneer of humor. Yet the road to success was brutally unforgiving. Arriving in Los Angeles, Leon faced a cruel reality. Stricter liquor laws meant fewer gigs, and hunger became a constant gnawing companion. But where others might have surrendered, Leon dug deeper. He mastered the guitar under the tutelage of James Burton and carved out a niche as a brilliant session musician, blending invisibly into hits by Jan and Dean Rickey, Nelson, George Harrison, and Barbra Streisand. Leon Russell's genius lay not just in his technical mastery, but in his boundless musical soul. Rock, blues, gospel, bluegrass, he played them all with a rawness and authenticity that few could match. Every hardship he endured LED into his music, giving it a depth and aching beauty that spoke directly to the heart. In 1970, destiny came calling when Joe Cocker, facing an impossible ultimatum from U.S. immigration, turned to Leon for salvation. With less than a week to prepare, Leon assembled the legendary Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, a chaotic, electrifying spectacle that would leave an indelible mark on rock history. He not only built the band, but took command when Joe Cocker, drowning in personal struggles, could not. Leon's presence was mesmerizing, commanding the stage in a thrift store basketball jersey and a top hat. He blurred the line between performer and shaman, captivating all who witnessed him simultaneously. Leon was crafting his own voice as a solo artist. His debut album, Leon Russell, featured collaborations with the likes of Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Mick Jagger. Songs like A Song for You and Delta Lady poured from his soul, drenched in longing and vulnerability. A Song for You, penned in a mere 10 minutes, would go on to become a timeless anthem, covered by over 40 artists, including Ray Charles, whose rendition earned a Grammy by the early 1970s. Leon Russell had become a towering figure in music. He performed at the Fillmore East alongside Elton John, and in 1971 answered George Harrison's call to play at the concert for Bangladesh, delivering performances that shimmered with raw emotion. The benefit album from that historic event would win a Grammy for Album of the Year in 1973, cementing Leon's place among the giants of music. But Leon Russell's spirit could not be confined by genre or expectation. He explored country, music. Under the pseudonym Hank Wilson, recorded groundbreaking sessions at his own church studio in Oklahoma, and nurtured the careers of countless other musicians. In every note he played, there lived a restless, defiant soul that refused to be caged, great to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as the bright lights of fame began to dim. Leon Russell entered a chapter of his life marked by profound struggle and heartbreaking decline. The 1980s found him drifting through a music industry that seemed to have forgotten the towering genius who once redefined its sound, though his passion for live performances burned as fiercely as ever. The crowds grew smaller, and the spotlight that once embraced him so warmly now flickered uncertainly in the distance. Leon clung to his music with a fierce, almost desperate devotion, touring with Newgrass Revival. He poured his soul into every performance, refusing to surrender to the cruel tides of time. Yet behind every triumphant note, there lurked an unspoken sorrow. The sorrow of a legend watching his world slip quietly away. The 1990s brought little respite, though he reworked old songs and even released Anything Can Happen with Bruce Hornsby. The world barely noticed for a man who once commanded stages alongside the greatest names in music. The indifference was a wound that no applause could heal. It was a silent, devastating erosion of the legacy he had fought so hard to build. Worse still, Leon's health began to betray him in ways that were as cruel as they were relentless. The once indomitable pianist now faced a series of brutal, merciless medical battles that ravaged his body and spirit. He endured agonizing surgeries, the slow suffocation of heart failure, and the creeping paralysis of a body that no longer obeyed his indomitable will. The simplest acts became monumental struggles. Walking, breathing, even lifting his hands to the piano keys he loved so deeply. Each heartbeat felt like a betrayal, each breath a painful reminder of the unstoppable decay within him. It was a tragic, harrowing chapter, a slow, excruciating fade that stripped away everything but the raw, burning core of who Leon Russell truly was. Yet even as pain became his constant companion, Leon refused to retreat into silence. He continued to tour, to create, to fight, clinging to music like a lifeline through the darkest storm. Each appearance on stage was no longer just a performance. It was a battle cry against oblivion, a heartbreaking act of defiance against the body that sought to betray him. The audiences who watched him could feel it. Every trembling note, every strained melody was steeped in a courage that words could scarcely describe. Then, like a beacon through the gathering darkness, came Elton John, recognizing the immeasurable debt he owed to Leon's inspiration. Elton did not merely reach out. He extended a hand of salvation filled with compassion and reverence. It was not a gesture for publicity, nor a calculated move for acclaim. It was an act of pure, selfless humanity. Elton, at the height of his own enduring fame, knelt in gratitude before a mentor, whose light had dimmed, determined to rekindle it for the world to see once more. Their collaboration on the Union 2. Wotan was more than music. It was a miracle, a final resurrection of a voice that had once shaped the very soul of rock and roll. Though Leon was frail, though the weight of years bowed his once mighty frame, his soul soared anew in the music they crafted together. Elton stood beside him, not as an equal, but as a devoted disciple, ensuring that the world remembered the titan who had inspired generations. The album became Leon's 6th gold record, a blazing, bittersweet triumph carved from the very edge of despair, a love letter from one artist to another across the ravages of time. But time, merciless and unyielding, could not be held at bay forever, despite enduring surgery after surgery. Despite the relentless grip of heart failure tightening around him, Leon kept going, each tour a marathon of agony, disguised beneath the tender fury of his performances. He gave every last note, every last ounce of strength, until there was simply nothing left to give on the morning of November 13th, 2. Earwon't 16. Leon Russell took his final breath at his home in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. His heart, the very engine that had driven decades of timeless music, could beat no longer. The piano fell silent. The tour buses parked forever, and an era ended with a silence so profound it seemed the world itself had paused to mourn. Leon did not merely pass away. He was torn from a world that could never quite deserve him, leaving behind an aching emptiness and a legacy that would echo for all eternity. And Leon jumped up on the table on the piano, and he said, "Philip, have you ever heard the word as the years passed and the final notes of Leon Russell's life faded into eternity?" A chorus of voices rose to honor the titan he had always been. Few tributes were as poignant and heartfelt as those that came from the artists who had once stood in awe of him. None more striking than the words from Cher, the queen of pop herself. Cher, who had witnessed Leon's brilliance firsthand during the vibrant days of the Wrecking Crew sessions, spoke with a raw, aching affection that pierced the heart. She recalled the quiet mystique that always surrounded Leon, the way he would slip silently into the studio, sit at the piano, and unleash a flood of music without fanfare or demand for recognition. He never said boo to anybody. Cher reminisced, her voice thick with emotion. He'd just come in, play his heart out, and vanish back into the shadows, leaving magic behind. Yet there was one unforgettable moment, one rare glimpse into the man behind the mystique that Cher could never forget. One day, Leon arrived at a session visibly intoxicated, a rare crack in his usually stoic exterior to everyone's shock. He began talking, joking, letting loose the mischievous, vibrant soul hidden within. We all looked at each other. Like, "Did you see that? Did you see?" Leon Cher laughed, though the memory was bittersweet. It was a fleeting, precious window into a heart weighed down by more sorrows than he ever allowed the world to see. The session spiraled into laughter and chaos, climaxing when Leon, still drunk but brilliant, stood atop the piano and shouted defiantly at the session leader, "Have you ever heard of the word respect?" It was a moment of rebellion, of humanity, of raw, unfiltered truth, and everyone who witnessed it knew they had seen a rare eruption of the storm that raged quietly within him. Leon's colleagues in the Wrecking Crew remembered him just as vividly. Trombonist Lou McCreary painted a portrait of Leon as a country boy, adrift in the sprawling chaos of Los Angeles, a young man living in a run-down motel on Sunset Boulevard without even a phone to his name, hustling for work in a world that barely knew his worth. Guitarist Tommy Tedesco recalled Leon's panic during an early session with Glenn Campbell, how Glenn's simple encouragement to play the stuff you did in Oklahoma unlocked the floodgates of Leon's true genius, freeing a style so authentic that it could never be replicated. Drummer Howe. Blaine spoke reverently of Leon's down-home southern piano, a sound so raw and pure it seemed to spring straight from the red dirt of his youth. And recording engineer Larry Levine remembered the awe of watching Leon's impossibly wide hands dance across the keys, conjuring melodies that could pierce the soul. The memories culminated in a story from Julius Vector, who recalled a night when an 80-piece orchestra waited for Leon to arrive, and waited and waited. When Leon finally limped into the studio, he said not a word, lifted the lid of the piano, and was about to play when a voice from the control room sharply reprimanded him. "Leon, don't you ever be late again." Without a word, Leon closed the piano, stood up and limped right back out, leaving the entire room suspended in stunned silence. It was an act of quiet rebellion, a refusal to be diminished, a final, lingering echo of the indomitable spirit that had defined him all his life today. Those who knew Leon Russell speak of him not just as a musician, but as a force of nature, wild, tender, stubborn, brilliant beyond measure. Cher, Elton John, and countless others who shared a stage or a studio with him carry his memory like a sacred fire, passing it from heart to heart, song to song. Leon Russell was more than a legend. He was a storm, wrapped in human form, a symphony of contradictions, a beacon for every soul who ever dreamed beyond their limits. His music endures, his spirit lingers, and somewhere in the quiet hush between notes, Leon Russell still plays on something to do, rather than to go home and waste money. Leon Russell's journey through life was one of remarkable highs and heartbreaking lows, but it was a journey that left an indelible mark on the world of music and on the hearts of those who truly knew him. Through every note he played and every song he wrote, Leon captured the raw, unfiltered essence of the human experience, love, loss, triumph, and pain, interwoven in a way few could ever replicate. Cher's poignant memories and the heartfelt tributes from Leon's peers remind us that he was not merely a musician. He was a soul who poured his entire being into his art, leaving behind a legacy that continues to ripple across generations. His spirit lingers in the quiet moments between songs, in the gentle hush before the music swells, and in the lingering resonance of a heartfelt melody that refuses to fade today. As we look back on the extraordinary life of Leon Russell, we invite you to be a part of this celebration of his legacy. Share your memories, your favorite songs, or simply a word of gratitude in the comments below. If Leon's music ever touched your heart, if his story ever inspired your soul, let your voice join ours in honoring a legend who will never truly be gone together. We can ensure that the magic of Leon Russell lives on note by note, memory by memory, in every heart he ever touched.